whatever or not is supposed to have happened. So logic dictates that yes, it is possible, but I wouldn't put it any stronger than that. Depends what people allege and what they want to say to these.
Because obviously there have been huge scandals in other places. Wales, which is a sometimes a different jurisdiction, Northern Ireland, there's been huge. Would the British inquiry extend itself to those areas? I mean, presumably Wales will be no problem, but Northern Ireland, can it start regurgitating?
Well, I would not. I'm not clear as to what the terms of reference for this inquiry are. So I may give you the wrong answer, but my understanding is it would not cover, for example, Northern Ireland.
Right. The other little thing, St Helena, have you got any idea what's been going on in St Helena?
Well, only what's been reported in the media about, there's apparently, there's an abuse problem there. I
mean, famously, some years ago, Pitcairn, with its tiny population, but they claimed it was a way of life there, so that was their defence, but they still went to jail, didn't they?
Yes, I know. So, it's interesting, these small island communities, maybe as a result of their isolation, or relative isolation, they have these pretty acute problems.
That was hinted at today in the evidence being given today. Smallness is a problem. Smallness, well, of course, smallness is a problem, but you can't be a worldwide finance centre on the one hand and be backward and small and efficient in farming community on the other, can you?
Well, I'm sure all of that will be gone into in one way or another over the coming months.
I mean, the argument could be made for any remote areas of England, say, well, we're a remote little area here, we haven't got the infrastructure, we can't look after children properly here because we haven't got facilities.
Well, I think if you go back over time, these were probably problems back on the mainland, and that's why there was legislation. You're dealing, you've only got to go back 30, 40, 50 years. Communication was completely different to the way it is now. And
because of local Jersey peculiarities, they set up a compensation fund here, which has more or less been dealt with. I think most of the victims that were going to get compensation, most of them have got their compensation, or it's been agreed. So that side of it has been more or less settled here, but every time there's a person is convicted, or historically persons have been convicted, the question arises, well, shall the victims be compensated? And now they can go back, presumably, on the basis of Savile, the estate's going to be looked at, and presumably the same with Rolf Howes, his estate's going to be looked at, and paying out compensation to people. Now, that could go back a very long time, couldn't it?
Well, victims are entitled in law to sue the person who hurt them for compensation, because that's the law. The law says if you hurt someone, you have to compensate them. That's been the law for centuries. It's a very simple law. If you hurt someone, that person you've injured is entitled to be compensated for the pain and suffering and harm that you caused them. So a victim who was abused, say, many years ago, still has that right to bring a claim. There's obviously some practical issues to think about. Can the case still be proved? Is the abuser still around? Because if he or she isn't, that's probably the end of the case anyway.
But I was thinking more people that had been convicted. Maybe you may have been convicted 10 years ago, and your lawyer didn't say, well, you can claim compensation. And if you now think, well, there's Jimmy Savile case, I can claim compensation because I was raped 10 years ago.
Provided the victim can get through the legal hoops, there's nothing to stop that victim pursuing that person who was convicted and sent to prison for abusing them. But there are issues, are you still entitled to bring a claim, and is the person that you're going to sue worth suing? There's no point in suing.
The Jersey, I think it's necessary to stress the Jersey compensation scheme was set up specifically because under Jersey law they were time barred. They couldn't bring these claims.
Exactly.
But that doesn't apply in the UK, so in the same way.
No, there's a law in England which says that a claim for compensation is meant to be brought within 3 years. And if you don't, you're out of time. And it's more or less the same law in lots of other Commonwealth jurisdictions. The Australian states have a similar law, although a bit different in each state. Canada, lots of other Commonwealth countries which adopted the English legal system. But the English courts allow a claim for compensation to be brought in respect of sexual abuse outside that 3-year period, provided it is fair to do so. Provided it's fair. In other words, fair to the victim and fair to the personal institution that is being sued.
Right. So it could be a local authority again in the UK. It could be long time after somebody's been convicted.
I have lots of cases on my desk as we speak where victims have been abused, you know, maybe as far back as the 1960s and 70s. And they are bringing cases, you know, 30, 40 years on after the event. And, you know, there's a good proven track record of those cases being successful.
The famous cases that we've heard of in the UK, most of the people that were involved were celebrities. They had money. There is money in the pot, but the number of victims, say the Jimmy Savile case, it's not going to go very far, is it, by the time everything's paid out?
Well, the High Court in London has sanctioned a scheme which means that all those victims with provable cases, as it were, will receive some compensation. The BBC have had to participate in that, as well as the government, and it's all designed to ensure that victims with credible claims are compensated without the hassle and everything that goes with it of going to court.
Is that what you're saying? Is there a financial liability on the BBC for some of the claims?
I'm sure there will be some financial liability for the BBC as regards those claims that they are going to be liable for.
Well, that could be very painful, couldn't it, for a lot of people?
Yes.
Justifiably so, you will say.
Well, you know, the law is if you employ someone and they go and sexually abuse somebody in the course of their employment, then you as the employer are going to have to take the rap.
But as we were hearing today at this inquiry, and you were suggesting, the liability of people at the higher levels that might not be the person doing the abuse, but not doing anything about it when perhaps they should have done something about it.
We have to hope that this committee of inquiry can get behind the allegations that people knew what was going on and didn't do anything about it and so on. Now, whether any of this is true or not, I don't know. I wasn't there. So we have to hope that the committee will hear from witnesses who were there, and the truth will then be discovered, for better for worse.
Right. As far as the MP, they approached you, the MPs, with their early day motion. Is that anything that you've been approached upon, to advise on?
No.
And you're still available to talk to anybody who wants to, if they want to learn something about this horrible business?
Well, if someone wants to talk to me, they're more than welcome to. They always are.
Okay. Thanks for your help.
Okay.
Cheers, Brian.